In March of 2003, after months of military buildup and some really tense diplomacy, the entire world was basically holding its breath. And for the hundreds of thousands of coalition troops waiting in the Kuwaiti desert, well, that wait was just about over. So let's dive right into the first 72 hours of the Iraq War, from that final tense countdown to the first boots hitting the ground.
You know, for the soldiers, a simple statement like this one changed everything. All those endless preparations, the drills in that punishing desert heat, it was all finished. The bombs and bullets being handed out now, they were real. The next shots they fired weren't going to be for practice. Suddenly, war wasn't just some possibility. It was right there, staring them in the face. So, how did those last few hours actually unfold? Well, for the troops on the ground, it was this period of just intense anticipation. You've got this mix of razor-sharp focus, a good bit of anxiety, and honestly, a real desire to just get on with it. The clock was absolutely ticking. President Bush's ultimatum set a hard deadline, and as it counted down, the whole war machine just lurched into its highest gear. You had convoys literally choking the desert highways, moving thousands of soldiers and all their equipment into their final attack positions. By those last few hours, this incredible force was coiled right on the border, just waiting for that political deadline to finally trigger the military one. What's really telling is the way the whole atmosphere in the camps changed. Places that were normally loud and full of energy became quiet, almost somber. The focus just narrowed completely to final preparations, checking your kit, readying your weapon, and maybe the most poignant thing of all, soldiers went through this incredibly difficult process of cutting their last links to home, handing over personal letters, photos, anything sentimental, just in case. So as they were getting ready to face the Iraqi army, these troops were also steeling themselves against two very different kinds of adversaries. One was the environment itself, and the other was chemical. Yeah, the desert was just a relentless enemy. These vicious sandstorms, they'd whip up with almost no warning, cutting visibility down to practically nothing and just clogging up vital equipment. We're talking helicopters grounded, soldiers getting lost just trying to walk from one tent to the next. It was this constant, irritating, and just demoralizing challenge. And then you had the unseen threat. The fear of chemical and biological weapons was everywhere. You could practically feel it in the air. Soldiers were drilled over and over and over again to react instantly. And the rule was clear. You have 9 seconds. 9 seconds to get your gas mask on. The thinking wasn't if these weapons would be used, but when. And this is what that reaction looked like. This is the procedure for MOPP4, the highest level of chemical protection. Now, just imagine trying to do all this in a panic. And then you have to wear this ridiculously cumbersome charcoal-lined suit with rubber boots and thick gloves for hours on end, all while trying to fight in temperatures that were already hitting 30 degrees Celsius. This was the grim reality they were told to be ready for. So as that final deadline passed, the war did begin. But, not really in the way that everyone was expecting. The war started with this, what's called a decapitation strike. See, based on some last-minute intelligence, U.S. forces launched a very limited barrage of cruise missiles and precision bombs. They were aimed at one single location in Baghdad, where they thought Saddam Hussein and his top guys were meeting. The hope? To maybe end the war before it ever really got started. And this quote just perfectly captures the feeling at the time. After those first strikes, there was a pause. The whole world had braced itself for this massive, overwhelming attack, but this was something else entirely. It was surgical. So in a really strange way, the waiting wasn't quite over. The main event was still to come. For the people living in Baghdad, the war arrived with the piercing wail of air raid sirens ripping through the pre-dawn darkness. Explosions started rumbling on the city's outskirts, and the sky was just peppered with the red tracer fire from anti-aircraft guns. It was the prelude to the storm that was about to break right over them. And then it came. The shock and awe campaign that everyone had been talking about was finally unleashed. These huge B-52 bombers, flying all the way from the UK, joined ships and stealth fighters in this massive, coordinated assault. Presidential palaces, government buildings, military headquarters, they were all just engulfed in fire and smoke as hundreds of missiles and bombs rained down on the capital. Now, while all those bombs were falling on Baghdad, the ground war was kicking off down in the south. And the mission here was all about one thing: speed. Secure key objectives and try to win this thing quickly. This number right here just gives you a sense of the sheer scale of this thing. 250,000 troops, this massive armored spearhead, began to pour across the big sand berms that separate Kuwait from Iraq, pushing north into the desert. One of the biggest fears going in was a repeat of 1991, where Saddam's forces set hundreds of oil wells on fire. So a huge early objective was to secure those southern oil fields fast. And while Iraqi forces did manage to light some up, the coalition advance was so quick that, as you can see, only 7 were actually ignited. A far cry from the potential disaster everyone feared. And this was the flip side of that coin, the big success. The vast majority of the enormous Rumaila oil field, with its more than 500 wellheads, was captured completely intact. It was an absolutely crucial early victory, securing a resource that was seen as vital for the future of Iraq.
So the picture on the ground was really complex. It wasn't a simple story. You had these rapid successes, right? Key strategic locations like the Al Faha Peninsula, which controls access to the Gulf, and the vital port of Qasr, they fell really quickly. And hundreds of Iraqi soldiers were surrendering. But at the exact same time, coalition forces were running into stiff, sporadic resistance, often from fighters dressed in civilian clothes, hiding among the population. This was especially true in the fierce battles for control of key bridges in cities like Nasiriyah. And this number is just a stark reminder of the human cost of all this. Before a single coalition soldier was lost to enemy fire, a U.S. helicopter crashed near the Kuwaiti border, killing all 12 British and American service members on board. It was a tragic accident that really underscored the dangers of the operation, even without a single shot being fired. But what really, truly set this conflict apart from any before it was how the rest of the world saw it. This was going to be the first war of the 24-hour news cycle, a war fought live on television. This slide just captures the revolutionary change perfectly. I mean, gone were the days of reports being typed up and censored days later. For the very first time, hundreds of journalists were embedded directly with combat units, and they were carrying satellite phones and laptops that allowed them to broadcast from the front lines in almost real time. It was wild. The military took a massive, calculated risk here, operating under what they called generous ground rules. Instead of censoring everything beforehand, they basically relied on journalists to use their own judgment and not reveal sensitive information. I mean, can you imagine? It was a level of trust and access that was completely unprecedented in warfare. And this quote just sums up the feeling of this new era perfectly. Nobody, not the journalists, not the military, and certainly not the public watching it all at home, had any idea what the impact of seeing a war unfold live on TV would be. It was a total unknown. So, after 72 hours, what you had was a picture of really rapid progress, but it was punctuated by very real dangers and some totally unexpected challenges. The coalition was definitely advancing on Baghdad, but the fighting was already proving to be way more complex and difficult than many had predicted, which left this critical question just hanging in the air. And the answer? Well, that would only unfold in the weeks and years to come.